but just remain in the cities. Mountains are extraordinarily important. Caves, yogis go off as far away from human consciousness, as sort of having their consciousness being colonized by human thinking into the natural world as a place to really have insights. And the natural environment is part of that. It's not separate. It's not just a place one goes, but it's alive, pregnant with energy, all kinds of energies too. Even the Buddha himself was, there's a story, I think, in the Pali Canon, Taji, I don't know, you might remember this one, where the Buddha talks about, he goes and walks into the forest and he hears the sound of an animal and he gets frightened. And so there's his practice, working with fear. The wilderness, the wilds, they're not always, it's not always this beatific, pleasant experience, but it can also be a fearful place. It can be a place that is, kind of puts us at the center of our fears. So now that seems to be happening in slightly a different way for many of us, anyway, who are concerned about the environment. Green Tara. Green Tara, the deity that we find, the Bodhisattva of compassion, Avalokiteshvara. What did he say? In Tibetan, he's known as Genrezig. He is a manifestation of boundless compassion, Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of boundless compassion. And he is so moved by our suffering that he himself sheds tears for the sufferings that we experience. And out of his left eye comes white Tara as as a response to our fears. She's also kind of this embodiment of spiritual wisdom, the feminine, the divine feminine of spiritual wisdom, as well as longevity and merit, and strong mind. Out of Avalokiteshvara's right eye comes Green Tara, that tear from his right eye. And she is the one that responds to our suffering. She's the one who has this sense of mercy and refuge. So she is known as the refuge in times of difficulty, and also protection, and is very much associated with the body of our planet, of the world. Even in one of the stories of Noble Silence, from the Sutta Nipata, the Buddha says, when you meet together, either talk about Dharma or maintain noble silence. Learn this from the waters. In mountain clefts and chasms, loud gush the streamlets, but great rivers flow silently. Empty things make a noise, while the full is always quiet. The fool is like a half-filled pot. The wise is like a deep, still pool. So it's clear, certainly in Buddhism, just how essential the natural world is in this bridge between matter and realization. It still is. So Marie, who read beautifully the story of Mara appearing, you mentioned Akshobhya. Akshobhya is the Buddha who we see with his hand touching the earth and the left hand in this sort of dhyana mudra, or the gesture of meditation. And these two gestures, the touching the earth and the hand palm up in one's lap, has many significances here. There seem to be complementary, these two mudras or hand gestures. And as I mentioned, the mudra of meditation, the hand posture of meditation, is, let's see. Yeah, when taken together with the earth-touching mudra or the Bhumisparsha, it's thought to be the union of method and wisdom. That the method is touching the earth. It's the way of what we might call skillful means. The Buddha was very skillful in that moment when he was challenged by Mara to say, who are you to think that you're enlightened? Who is here to testify, give testimony to your awakening, other than your own mind, which is clearly deluded. So, touching the earth. And samsara and nirvana, also touching the earth as a response to samsara, and enlightenment or freedom or awakening being represented by the turned hand with the palm up, as well as realizations of conventional and ultimate truths. So again, touching the earth being really that sort of matter and material, seem to be conventional, right? Form, and ultimate truth, formlessness. So there are these very interesting parallels here, but ultimately they are both one experience. So Akshobhya, this figures, often you'll see these Buddha figures in a row of five. Akshobhya is the one who is touching the earth. He is seen to be the immovable one, the one who is unmoved, the one who has rootedness in the earth, equanimity, neutrality. So as these things come, he sees them for what they are. He is able to continue practicing while bearing witness himself to what makes up these distractions. So that's the wisdom part. So Akshobhya transforms delusion into anger, the delusion of anger into mirror-like wisdom. And the Bhumisparsha mudra, this hand position, is what helps to bring about this state of awakening. The earliest that we know of Bhumisparsha it's very obscure where this originates, because it's not part of the Pali Canon, the authoritative texts in Buddhism, but it arises sometime later. And one of the earliest forms of this we know is something called the Charya Nidana, back in 197 CE. So it's very early, but it's not nearly as early as the Buddha's teachings. So it is interesting that somewhere along the way, in the loss perhaps of the Pali texts in India when Buddhism was sort of evicted from that continent, that we don't really know fully the origins. Would you agree, Tajay?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Tajay is an expert on the Pali Canon. Yes. We have many great conversations about it. But anyway, that was my understanding too. So the word Bhumi, the first in this compound term, Bhumi. What did you say it means, Marie? Bhumi.
Is it in my
Oh, I'm sorry. This is not meant as a quiz.
is it in my notes? I don't know.
Bhumi.
If you have watched the Airbender, the last Airbender, Art Benders, there is a character called Bhumi. So Bhumi means the ground, the earth.
Ground, earth. Yeah.
Oh.
Material things that we can touch.
And it's interesting. It's almost as if the earth is benefactor here.
Yeah.
It's not just soil, matter, but in this tale of touching the earth is that which bears witness to us. And this is important. We often feel like when it comes to the environment, we are bearing witness to what is happening to the environment and maybe feeling helpless about making change in terms of what's happening sort of with the climate, fossil fuel use, all of that stuff. We're not going to get into that because it's stressful and we're about to go to bed. So tomorrow.
Yeah.
But it's that the earth, when we're out in the natural world, is bearing witness to us too. It is that which relates to us. I don't know if any of you have felt like the earth somehow is communicating with you, as opposed to you being like a passenger just passing through as you're hiking, but really being spoken to by the different language that nature brings us. And it is conscious. It is conscious. It knows we're here. Obviously, the great forestry, Peter Wohlleben. Anybody ever read The Hidden Life of Trees, Secret Life of Trees?
Oh, yeah.
Who once on a PBS interview said that trees have a different sense of time than humans. And a tree can sense our presence if we spend long enough with it over time, over many time. So part of it is our sense of time. We're so quick, even when we're hiking sometimes. That's why it's nice to get away and actually be in a place like this for at least a weekend. Mm-hmm. So Bhumi being this quality almost of the earth as very much alive and conscious and responsive. Not just matter, if you will, like the scientific community might have. As I'm not bashing science at all, but sometimes it can feel very materialistic that way. The word sparsha means contact, right? It means there's touching happening. But it's meant not just as a physical touch, but that there is a sensory experience between the feeling sense, or what we might call the sense door, and what is being touched. And in between is what? Do you think is in between?
Consciousness.
Exactly, Ken. Yes. Consciousness. It's not just, oh, I am here and I'm touching a book. Oh, I am feeling the book, subject, object. But that there is a consciousness there. That touching itself isn't just a sense, but it is imbued with consciousness. And so this is the meaning of sparsha here. It's not just touching or contact, but it's the process of awareness and consciousness that is arising there. It's in essence a sense of knowing. And there's a part of us that is wakeful as we're touching. It's a sensory process after all. It's not a cognitive one. If I do this, the second my knuckle hits the bowl, I'm not having to make an experience happen. I'm hearing, I'm feeling, I'm seeing. And so the word ayatana, sense base, right? This sense base, the object of feeling, the subject of feeling, and the consciousness that is there. Vijnana, sense consciousness, another way to say it. So sense of knowing in conscious wakefulness is wisdom. A sense of knowing. So as we begin to slow down, it's one reason why meditation and contemplative practice gives us the space, the opening to slow down that pace. That's why touching a tree, sometimes you want to touch it longer. It's hard not to once you start. Well, I don't know about you. I don't want to do it quickly.
Can I say something?
Yeah, Marie, please go ahead.
So I've had so many experiences here at Rolling Ridge. I've been around these grounds now for over 3 years, and I've hugged many trees, touched them, and had lots of we do a thing called worship in the woods, and we go out and we explore and we talk about the 4 C's, what do we connect with. And I was talking about this at dinner, telling them some of my experiences, and it's really amazing how things just show up when you're there and you're aware. It's about the consciousness, but it's about the awareness of there is something more than just being there with the tree. There's more than the tree. And if we walk way down by the edge of the lake, there's one tree that hangs almost over. And underneath the ground where the water comes, it's all hollow because the water has come up. But then when it comes back, you can see all the roots, and all the roots are underneath. And when there's no water, you can actually go out near there and look underneath. But all the roots are so connected, and you can tell that the trees do talk to themselves beyond the roots. And if one is sick, the other one helps it. And so there is such a huge thing that happens in the environment when it's, allowed to be its own native self, and it's not, it doesn't have invasive plants. We had someone come here and tell us what was invasive and what was ruining the bugs. We have good, bad bugs, bad bugs. We have beautiful trees, and we have the hemlocks that are trying to take over, and they're getting diseased and create disease. So there's so much about the environment that's natural, but when we go out and start planting things and trying to ruin it ruins it. We interrupt it, but it's like what we do in our own life. So there's this natural process, and when we're out there, it's so beautiful and sacred, and you can feel it. Like Chris was talking about, I think it's an energy that you can feel, and I always feel it here. And I think it is a very sacred place, like Nicole was saying. So yeah, I'm excited that you can be here and maybe to be aware of what are our senses telling us, right? And I'm a very visual learner, so I like to print pictures. So here's the Buddha touching the earth. If you want, I'll leave these pictures over there. And here's the other 5 Buddhas, and it tells you what Siddhartha did, like with each one, what it means. Siddhartha responds to Mara, that's the Akshobhya. And then there's the other ones. But, there's so much about this. And I think it's important that we talk about why did Buddha go out into the forest in the first place? It was because he was born into royal family, and he didn't know about his parents, and everyone was trying to keep him from knowing about aging and sickness and death because they didn't want him to know about any of that. And then he wanted to find out about it, and they were like, oh no, you can't hear about it. They wanted him to be a warrior for his tribe. And correct me if I'm wrong, but he goes out because he wants to learn more about what's true, right? What's true. So when he goes out, he finds out about the earth, and the earth is his witness. So that's why he learned from the earth, I think, right? And so that's what we're trying to do. Like what I try to do is learn from experience, not my books and what other people tell me. Everything has to be experiential and visual for me. A lot of it's visual, seeing, feeling, touching. So anyway, I just needed to share that because there is such good things that I saw a deer last week, and there were all these birds like caw, 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 flying, thousands and thousands of blackbirds one time. And I looked it up, and it was because they had died. Someone in there, they had died, and some of their birds had died, and they were just really, it was their way of mourning, I guess. But yeah, one time we were here, and I said, okay, go out and see what connects to you. And there was all this thunder and lightning and things coming at us, and hail, and there was fires like all over the place around here. And then I went home, and there was fires at my home, and I'm like, okay, I just said, give us a connection. It's amazing, but you just never know what can show up when you're aware and looking for it, right?
Ken, did you have a question?
Yeah,
Sorry.
Oh, it's okay. Yeah, I just wanted to say I had the good fortune over the last 15 years or so to have made trips to Peru in the jungle and spend time with the Shipibo people. And what's so fascinating, when a child is born, they they take the afterbirth and they bury it under a tree. And that tree becomes the child's tutelary link to the forest.
Wow.
And the fact that they buried human biological material under that tree, I think the idea is that the tree absorbs that into itself. So that's a very organic link between the child and the tree.
Right.
And the child, they say the child learns to listen to the language of that tree.
Yeah.
And for the rest of its life, that tree is the child's link to the forest.
Yeah. That's lovely. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. That's beautiful.
Why don't we do that now?
Well,
We have somebody here who's pregnant,
I'm like, wait a minute.
but too early yet, right?
Yeah. Well, that's very interesting. Part of it too is, I think, so why talk about this this view, and that is that it really is something that we can employ into but kind of bring into our being in a place like this with water and trees and soil, air and all of that, that as we're sensing this environment, paying attention, the contemplative way to sense this environment, one approach anyway, is to be mindful of, I'm hearing a bird. And that which is unifying in that experience is that sense consciousness. Right? We actually aren't just hearing something out there, but it's like a language is happening, a very subtle one. And that realization can bring us more into, I think, a way of contemplating the earth that is also nourishing at a time where many people might be feeling anger or fear about the future, what's happening with the planet, the climate, the fires, all of these things that can begin to really impact how we relate to it. And so the earth is still here and vibrant. This is not an excuse not to not do anything about climate change, but it's easy to get spun off into the stories of what's wrong. So she is still there. The body of Green Tara, Dorje Pagno, is still very, very prolific and is there responding to us in this place and aware of our presence. So just some little points to hopefully help. And also, given that so much of our world focused on technology and social media and all of these things that I'm not going to bash because I use them too, but they are groundless. They are turning us largely into beings that spend a lot of time in a groundless, ethereal, no, not even that. Disembodied, thank you. And so if you consider that we have these lives that are really, really active and busy, and especially on screen time over the last couple of years, screen time over the last couple of years, the addiction to these things, to computer games, if you're a kid and you're just totally absorbed in these things, both being addicted, or we can talk about the three poisons, greed, hatred, and delusion, while also being groundless in that world. It's not a good state for people to be in and to change things. So this need, I think, to be grounded back into the Bhumi of the natural world is really helpful. And this is, and so how we relate to it, it matters. Yeah? We still feel good when we go out and go hiking, right? And we go to the beach or in a place like this.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean we're shirking our responsibilities, but we're attuning really to the energy of Dorje Pagmo as she remains long after we're gone, probably. So